think we're good to go, Debbie.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Debbie Driscoll, the director for the Indiana Township Association. I want to thank Tamara for setting this up for us and for Purdue Extension's partnership really in this tough road we've all been on. I hope that you have all discovered the website for different kinds of guidance in this state that we find ourselves in, this new state of COVID. And there are a lot of resources already posted there, some by Association of Counties, some by AIM, the cities and towns, and some from other places. But I think you'll find relevancy in a lot of the posts that are on that site. And if you don't have that, I'll put it in the, or Tamara, maybe you could put that website in the chat, and people can pick up on it that way. And today we have with us representatives from the DLGF, the Department of Local Government Finance, and our Commissioner Wes Bennett is here with us along with his team members. And we also have the State Board of Accounts personnel headed by our examiner, Paul Joyce. And with him, he has Chase Lennon and Deborah Gibson. And it looks like Jonathan Weiger's on here as well. And these are the people that are going to help answer questions today. And I think with that, I'll just go ahead and I'm going to toss it first to Commissioner Bennett. I sent him a question for him to chew on. And let me see, I don't know that I have a copy of the question in front of me. Wes, if you could perhaps start with that question. Did you get it? Do we have Wes sound? I see you. I think he's still trying to wire up here. Okay. Wes, did you hear me?
Let me give Wes a call real quick.
Okay.
Again, I'll send Wes the call-in number to make sure he has that, and we may have to start with somebody else.
That's fine. I didn't get any questions that were directed specifically to the Board of Accounts. Let me double check here. Yes, here's a question that comes to us very frequently, Board of Accounts, and that is, may I spend money from my rainy day fund or my township assistance fund to help local food pantries?
Go ahead, Debbie.
I'm sorry?
I was going to let Debbie go ahead on that one.
Okay.
Debbie, can you hear Debbie?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
I can.
Yes.
Okay. And Chase, you can chime in at any point, but for food pantries, your general monies can be utilized that way. What was the other one?
Rainy day funds?
Yes. So either one of those, it would the problem would be running into if you utilize the assistance funds. Is that not right, Chase?
That's right. I usually also add that there's a section in the township statute for community service agreements. So if they want to go that route, then they can look at that statute. And there's some requirements in there that it has to be appropriated in the budget, and it can't be used for like if another government unit is supposed to be doing that service already. But for the food pantry specifically, that wouldn't apply. So you can do that. And for the rainy day, as long as it's in the resolution stating you can use that money for that, then you can.
And we do have, the ITA has a sample community service agreement or contract in the members only section of our website. If you have trouble locating it, you can email me and I can send that to you. It's just a fill in the blank sort of agreement that you can set up between you and another agency. This next question, I believe, goes to DLGF. Is Wes able to hear and speak yet? Do we have Wes?
Wes, can you hear us?
No.
Still does not have any sound.
Okay.
Paul, do you see the number in the chat box? Can you text that to Wes?
Can you unmute me?
Yep, there you go, Wes.
Can you
You're
hear me
on.
now?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. I keep getting muted for some reason. So, hey, it's nothing like starting the meeting 7 minutes late. Sorry, I'm sorry, folks. What was the question again, Debbie?
I'm going to start with this one. Should we go ahead and do an additional appropriation even though we currently don't need it? We anticipate that we will need it in the future, but want to be sure to answer the pre-budget questions correctly.
Well, I think the short answer is no. I don't really advocate doing an additional appropriation until you need it. I might not necessarily have enough information to really answer it completely, but I think the short answer is no. But I would certainly, as you get closer to knowing exactly what you need and what you need it for, would be the time to do the additional appropriation.
Should we do the additional appropriation before budget planning?
Well, your budget planning is for next year, so I guess I'd like a little bit more information if they want to talk to me offline about what they're thinking that they're going to need it for. Is it COVID related? Is it what's it related to? But you don't necessarily have to do it before the budget planning for it to be factored into next year's budget or into your cash balances when calculating next year's budget.
And by the way, if your question is asked and you didn't get all of the information you'd like, you can feel free to put that in the chat as well, and we can pick up on it that way. There is one in the chat box right now that says, with the supplemental local income tax distributions that townships received earlier in May, has the state set guidelines as to what those monies can be used for?
Paul, I'm going to probably punt this one to you, but I think they're still working on that. But it at this point, what I've been told is that it needs to be COVID related. So, Paul, could you take this one for me?
Honestly, I can't. I'm going to find out, though, what the specific guidelines are, then send them out to the email group. I do not think they've been finalized.
Okay. I cannot hear.
Chase, do you know anything on that one?
I was muted. I'm sorry.
I do
Chase,
not,
do you
Paul.
have-
I have not heard any guidance other
I'm
than.
gonna say I don't think they've sent it out, so we'll definitely look into that, get the guidance, and send it out.
Okay. Okay.
Please, if you have questions, either text them to me. My number is in the chat box, or you can place them. Place them in the text box itself, the chat box.
Hey Debbie, this is Fred Van Dorp. Can you hear me? Hey, I've got a little bit more information on that supplemental distribution. Townships are only eligible to receive a certified shares supplemental distribution. With the certified shares, those can be pledged to any fund and can be used for any legal purpose for the unit. The only thing that a unit will need to keep in mind is that those funds are unbudgeted. right? So they weren't used in the original creation of their budget. So they're still going to be held to a sort of maximum spending of the certified budget order. They just have, for the townships that received the supplemental distribution, they have just received a new revenue source that can be used for any legal purpose.
Thank you.
Debbie, did we get to the question that you had that you sent me earlier today?
We have not. Would you like to address that? And would you like me to read it first?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead, please. Thank you.
How do I present my township financial picture to achieve the least amount of potential cuts to expected distributed operating funds?
So I've had a chance to think about this one for several hours. I think it's really just basic and fundamental operational control and management of your budget. In order to have an effective pre-budget and budget planning, you need to make sure that your financials are up to date. You need to make sure that you reconcile your bank account or bank accounts every month. Make sure you're paying your bills on time, getting through the AP process, making sure you're not over encumbering purchase orders or over encumbering budget line items. So really, I think the answer is real simple: is to maintain your accounting internal controls and guidelines, and make sure that everything is up to date and current. So that when the DLGF works with you on your 2021 budget during the budget workshop period, you're going to have good information. You're going to have the best information that you can have at the time to build that budget. Now, the flip side of that is, of course, your revenues, and that's where it's going to get a little tricky this year with revenues coming in later. Probably going to see a decrease in revenues. And so when we come in to help you work your budget, we're going to work on both sides of the ledger, if you will, both the revenue and the expense side. So be prepared, have your financials up to date and current. Manage your budget, manage this year's budget. You know, some of the revenues that you're going to be seeing this year are maybe coming in lighter or less than what you were anticipated. So don't get ahead of yourself. Don't let your expenses get ahead of the revenues for this year as well. So the more that you can reserve in your cash balances this year, the more you'll have for next year. And I always like to remind folks that even though it appears that we come in and cut, it's really we're balancing. We're balancing to your revenue. So we will allow you to budget whatever amount that you can fund. If you cannot fund a certain level budget, then we're going to come in and balance it and help you balance that. So I hope that helps, and we can certainly have continued discussion and build on that answer if anyone would like to.
I'll ask a follow-up to that, Wes. If a unit sees that they're not going to need the appropriations they have set in a certain fund or a line item, can you explain what they can do to free that up so they can use it next year? Sure,
they can do a reduction of appropriation. It's a simple, I think, a simple resolution by the governing township board that does a reduction of appropriation for whatever amount that they feel that they're not going to need in this year's budget.
Very good. Someone has asked about the House Bill 1065 guidance and where we're at with that.
Yeah, that came up 2 weeks ago, and that guidance is sitting on my desk waiting for my review. So I think the next time we have a call, we're going to have had issued that guidance, and so look for that. Oh, if not this week, early next week at the latest. So that's all I can say at this time. I'm the holdup here, but I'll be looking at that and giving it my final review this week.
And guidance on, I believe it's House Bill 1031, which is the, referencing the capital improvement plans and transfers.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to defer to my either my budget team or my legal team on that one. Was there a question? Because I thought we had already issued some guidance on that, Debbie.
With the
Is
new
there
dates.
a question on the guide? Oh, the new dates. Okay.
There are still people
Is it-
asking if they have to have it done by this budget cycle. So I thought maybe go out for that.
Help me out here, but for some reason I thought that was extended. But Fred or Emily, do we have a?
This is Dave Marusars from the DLGF. The past session, the General Assembly extended the deadline to adopt the capital improvement plan to September of 2021. So they just moved it up a year. Back a year to 2021. Yeah. And
Go ahead, Dave.
we will have new guidance out for the capital improvement plan later this year.
Okay. And will we continue to run or be able to run online board meetings and hearings? And if so, for how long?
That's going to go until the governor changes his executive order. And the way the question is written, it says, will we continue? The real question there is, I mean, you don't have to have them. I mean, that depends on your locality, on where you live, and you know, whether or not you are allowed to have, 10 people in there, 25 people in there, or whether you think it's going to expand beyond that. I mean, initially, if you believe that your meetings aren't going to expand beyond that, you can have your live meeting as long as you do it and social distance properly in there.
Okay. I know some of those hearings can be pretty crowded. When people are trying to adopt things like territories or whatnot, they can have quite a few people in attendance.
I mean, for the short term, I would definitely continue. Even a lot of people are having them live, but yet then also streaming them out and allowing people to participate like that. And then, maybe if they're limited to 10 people, allow 10 people inside, but then, still streaming it. So they do maintain whatever their limitations are. I mean, it's a convenience factor as much as anything to get as much transparency within the process as possible.
When will the moratorium on disconnects and evictions be lifted? Is there any guidance on this?
Not yet. I'm not aware. Again, I think that will come later on when the governor decides to do so. But I have not heard of any time in which that will be lifted.
We are considering.
I'm sorry, Debbie. Can I take I see a couple a reduction of appropriation chats in the chat box. So how do we do a reduction of appropriation in July when this is really going to hit us in late third quarter, fourth quarter? And I think that's a valid point. You don't really, I don't think I ever did a reduction of appropriation anytime earlier than the late in the third quarter. So, you can probably up until your last meeting of the year do in December do a reduction of appropriation. You'll just need to let us know so that we can adjust your cash balances, or we'll pick up your 12/31 cash balances, December 31st cash balances. Again, keeping your bookkeeping up to date. If you do the reduction of appropriation, make sure you adjust your budget in your internal software. So, and then in regards to a reduction of appropriation, let's see, is it okay to hold on projects originally planned but possibly adjusted now? Sure it is. That's your call. If you think that there's a higher priority for that money now rather than what you originally appropriated it for, you can certainly do the reduction of appropriation or repurpose it for what you think is more appropriate. But again, keeping it within your already approved budget.
We are considering setting limits on township assistance utility funding. Is there any guidance or comments on this? I can speak to that, I guess. As far as setting limits on utilities, the main thing that we have always been taught by legal counsel is that you need to be sure that the service is provided. In other words, we're not bill payers, we are service providers. So just paying a bill at a certain level may not do anything other than collect money for the utility company. So if you pay a partial or you don't pay the total amount to keep them out of disconnect, it may not be doing the household any good by paying a portion. So that's what we've been taught by our attorneys. Regarding the food pantry question, is a board resolution or motion accepted by the township board required in order to give funds to a food pantry?
Chase.
I think I can answer that one. It's not required to have a resolution or a motion accepted by the board, but for audit documentation, we do request that you have a contract, most likely a community service contract documented. The board doesn't have to approve those types of contracts. I think the trustee can just enter into it, but it's always good to run that by your board and note that in the minutes as well.
How do we handle board signatures while having online meetings?
You know, in the world I live, as far as I'm going to accept, and we haven't addressed it, but we can, I think through emails and accepting them and then owning that email account for that person, and then attaching that, then that would be good. And then what I would recommend is after, you know, that would be for the initial one, but then when you do go back to live meetings and in person, you know, just accept the prior meetings as written and give everybody an opportunity to go through them. And don't worry about going back and re-signing each one. Do it through that one meeting there.
Okay. How long will we be allowed to use the COVID-19 applications that, to State Board of Accounts, you approved that shortened application to be used? Will we be able to use it beyond July 4th?
For our case right now, yes. We're gonna, when this health emergency is over is when we'll go back and talk about redoing those forms and processes, and or, you know, we can sit down and discuss, is there a better way to do it in the long term?
Back to the question on board signatures, can we use a service such as DocuSign for signing documents?
Yes, you can. I wouldn't want to mandate it because I think it would take a lot for everybody to learn. But it would definitely be a good document signing practice.
Very good. All right, we are open to questions, folks. If you have a question, you can go ahead and verbally ask it. You can text it to me or put it in the chat box. We have one that just popped up. My board member is supposed to check the month-end documents for internal controls, but she does not want to come out to check them over, and we have a handwritten ledger. Not sure what to do.
What about the other two board members?
Okay, so they should explore getting a different board member that's willing to
Yeah,
check the books?
do they have the capability of scanning? I mean, I don't know what, in Tammy's instance, what kind of capabilities they have, but I mean, they could always scan them in and you know, share them with the board member, or, you know, find somebody else. Could even be the auditor. It's just about having somebody else do the verification.
So, this is Tammy.
Oh, thank you,
so-
Tammy.
No problem. So, yes, she's over 65, so she doesn't want me to bring her anything, you know, nothing like that. She doesn't want to have any contact at all.
I understand that.
I do have two other board members, but our resolution states that this member is the one that does it. So, I do have the, what I want to say, that the ledger that we actually put on the gateway, I have that ledger that just gives the totals. And I could send that to her along with a copy of the bank statement and the reconciliation. Would that suffice?
I think it would, Chase. I mean, that would be enough for me to verify what you have there.
I agree with that. I'd make the comment that you might want to think about having specific procedures on internal controls and resolutions, because you're kind of limiting yourself there. You more want to have the resolution and then have your internal control policies that you can edit, because it's your management. You're the one deciding what internal controls you want to do. So if you want to change that and take pictures and email that to her, and then she send an email back, and that'd be documentation of her doing that, that's up to you. So
Okay.
you just have to think out of the box.
Hey, Debbie,
Okay.
can I bring something up while we're talking about banks and bank statements real quick?
Sure.
Debbie Gibson and Chase, but everybody should have received a recent email about some fraudulent checks that are being issued by various, I don't know whether they're individuals or who's doing it right now, but they're taking old checks and remodifying them and making them payable to themselves, and they're looking real good, and banks are cashing them. So, you know, keep a real close look at your bank accounts right now. Do monthly checks on them, or, you know, if you get information to your phones, if the banks can set it up, have them, you know, have it know exactly what's going through your account. I mean, one place was hit for over $20,000. I mean, it's a lot going on, and people are taking advantage of, I think, local governments right now that may or may not be fully engaged with what's going on. So we've had it in 3 different local governments. And of course, the checks aren't coming from here in Indiana, they're coming from somewhere else, but some of them are over $3,000 a piece. So it's not like it's small money. We're currently talking with the banks to see if we can come up with something that the banks can do internally to help put an extra monitor on it or something. But just for right now, as an internal control, just try to keep an extra vigilance out for looking for what checks are going through your accounts and make sure they're good.
And to kind of dovetail along with what Paul is saying, when it comes to a board member who's trying to be that internal control, you might also want to consider that they too can have at least read-only to the bank statements. That will enable them to not just depend on a scanned-in copy of things, but can actually do some checks and balances themselves to see about the records that they're appropriate. So just another idea.
And somebody asked if there's
There's,
an investigation on it. Definitely. We're working on it with the FBI right now to see if we could figure it out and where it's coming from. But a lot of times these things actually are wind up coming from somewhere like Russia or out of the country. It's not even in the country. So
I was going to just add to that. My bank, when I was clerk treasurer for the town, had a positive, I think they called it a positive pay system,
right.
to where,
Positive pay.
is that what it's called? Yeah, positive pay. So I would check with your bank, and I would get that service, because it didn't cost me anything, and it caught several fraudulent situations that saved the town tens of thousands of dollars. So
Yeah.
positive pay.
What positive pay is you'll create, after you write your checks, and you'll send the bank basically a file that'll show what checks you wrote. And then when the banks get it, they're going to compare it to that list. If it's not on that list, they're not going to pay it. So it is worthwhile using, as long as it is cost effective.
I see we have a hand raised with a phone number starting with 750.
That's Wes.
502. Oh, that's Wes with his hand up.
Is that me? Oh.
I left it there so I don't mute you.
I'm having a real challenge with technology today. My goodness. Debbie, have your membership, are they aware of the CARES money, the $300 million that the Office of Management and Budget and the Budget Agency and the governor have earmarked for local cities, towns, counties, and townships, et cetera?
I think a lot of our people are aware of that, Wes. We've not sent out guidance, but I have a meeting on Thursday on the subject that I think will lead to a piece we can put out on that subject.
Okay. All right. So everybody's, if you're not, you'll be aware that the townships need to go through their county commissioner for any assistance or any request for money. Essentially, is what that boils down to.
And that works. I know here in my county, the trustees petitioned the county commissioners, and we are receiving funds from that disbursement. So it does work. I have another question here. If we wish to continue to keep our doors locked to the public while still providing assistance electronically, which has been very successful for us, would we need to adopt a resolution? Would this be under home rule?
Can you repeat the start of that?
Yes. If we wish to continue to keep our doors locked to the public, but still providing township assistance electronically, would we need to adopt a resolution?
I mean, I think that goes back to some of the first guidance that we put out as far as coming up with a policy. And I think, we use the word policy whenever we did it. And that would be for the period of time of the health emergency. And that's going to be based on everybody's own personal, health, I guess. And if you feel you're in a higher degree of susceptibility to catch the COVID from somebody else, then I think just create that policy through the end of this, beyond the health emergency. I think that's a larger legal kind of discussion about whether or not things have to be open or whether it can just be electronic. But during the health emergency, I believe it's fully and everybody's right to do the business and get it done however they can get it done. And the point is, as long as they're getting it done.
County commissioners this is in Monroe County, I believe, from Rita Barrow. County commissioners are thinking about submitting a grant to the trustee organization to help with utility deposits and amounts over our guideline amounts. We are having a trustee meeting to assign a trustee to manage the disbursements. Is there anything we need to consider before issuing payments?
The only thing I would consider that is, and it would be more for the county commissioners, that this would not be COVID related and it wouldn't be able to be reimbursed from the COVID funds. So it would be, and I don't know where their thought processes are on it, but it would be something that's outside of that and within the county budgets. So Debbie would need to get with Lori and Ricky to even see if the county could do that specific thing, but it definitely would not be out of the COVID fund.
Okay. I know in the process we just went through in our county, they discovered they could not do a lump sum to our association, our county association, that it had to be each individual township receiving the funds and accounting for them. So I know that was explored, and that's what the county came up with.
Every expense that's going to get reimbursed from COVID money, from the $300 million, has to be for a COVID-related expense that the state has identified. And the county will be required, when they work with the townships individually, to follow that same guidance. And each township basically will submit receipts that they spent this money for one of the allowed expenditures, and then the county will then request that reimbursement as part of the county's allotment. And that will be up to each individual county.
We are open for any questions from you all. If you have any questions, just jump in here. There is a note in the chat box to Tammy from Melissa. Just wanted to note that. She said they went through their audit and we have handwritten ledger and minutes instead of pictures. We used an app called Adobe Scan to send scans of our documents, and they are very clear. They're actually clearer than the pictures we did previously. The app is free.
That's great. I will also say that, you know, if you have the handwritten records, and we're trying to be as cautious as everybody else and do things remotely too, is we can have people come and like to a certain location, like you take the records off of a step or something, and we have wand scanners that we can scan through those records and move them up, and then like we've actually met people, took them out of the trunk and then put them back in their trunk. So you know, we're trying to, you know, make a way to work with lots of people. Sometimes we'll meet people at the courthouses in a designated separate room. They'll leave them in there. We'll go in there the next day, do the scanning of the records, and then put them back, and then they can go back in there the following day. And once again, that's just to let anything that might be in the air settle back down. So basically just trying to find a way that everybody feels comfortable with doing it. But I really like that idea right there. It's really great.
Has the State Board of Accounts called meeting been rescheduled?
I can answer that one. We are doing our first in-house meeting, so from our central office in Indianapolis for counties this Thursday. And I'm going to be in the room helping the county ladies, and just to see how that goes. And Jonathan and I are going to learn from that, and then we're going to send an email out probably a week later and just pick a date and reschedule it at that point. So it's coming soon. So look for an email.
But it will be virtual.
Yes, virtual.
This question popped up again. Are there townships with existing limits on utility payments versus paying the entire disconnect amount? In case you missed that discussion, I think it comes down to being sure that the household, if they're eligible in every other way, you would need to see that they have the services necessary to prevent suffering, if I understand statute. So that's our responsibility to see whether the township pays the full amount or puts their funds together with other agency funds to make the bill to prevent the disconnect. When might we anticipate guidance on a return to in-person township assistance application or interviews? We had that question, but Paul, you want to reiterate what you said?
Yeah, once again, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we can go through the end of the public health emergency, and I don't think anybody knows when that is. And for me, that would be when a vaccination has been developed and people are necessarily not at risk. And so we will continue that, allowing that until that time happens. When you go back to having in person will be up to you in your office. But you won't have to, as far as I'm concerned, for a while.
Here's a question that goes back to talking about the grants. Do you know if those expenses are fully reimbursable rather than the RPA grants at 75/25?
Yeah, Wes and I.
Debbie, what's the RPA? Well, yeah, what's the I'm sorry. What's RPA?
I was hoping you could tell me.
I'm going to go with that's probably is that a FEMA grant?
I don't know, Deputy.
Okay, request for public assistance. Okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Paul, go ahead. I've got a few comments, but if you want to, we have been in several of these calls.
The COVID money, if it's a COVID related expense, is 100%, okay, allowable. And once again, we got to go back to, it has to be on the state allowable list. And you can go to IEDC website and actually find on that website what the state is allowing, which is sometimes different than what the federal government is allowing. It's a tighter parameter. And if it's on that list, then it is 100% reimbursable. That being said, the guidance that everybody is giving the counties is first look at FEMA as well, because FEMA is also a very large pool of money in where they're reimbursing local governments for COVID-related expenses, and fire in the fire departments and what they're doing with it is a lot under FEMA. So if it's not maybe reimbursed over on the one, it can always be possibly submitted through FEMA and one of the others.
Since our utility company, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Deb.
A new question. Since our utility company is not issuing disconnects, what do we do when people come for assistance without a disconnect?
I think you go through your regular normal policy and see whether or not they're somebody you assist or not.
There are two schools of thought, because I've had this discussion with many trustees these last couple of months. One school of thought is if they are eligible in every other way, you can go ahead and assist with the utility bill, or you can wait until that is lifted, and then you're going to be dealing with several months of accrued bill, which my recommendation is that you kind of keep up as you go, because if they come in with a 4-month accrued bill, you're going to have to actually look at their income versus expenses to determine their eligibility for 4 months.
Yeah, that's my concern, is they show up with a $1,500 bill because they're just not paying it right now.
Right. So we determine, in my office anyway, we determine eligibility month to month rather than waiting for a disconnect, because they could have had the previous ability to pay, and you won't know that unless you dig deeper and go back several months. So again, two schools of thought. I know a lot of townships require a disconnect notice before they touch a utility bill, but then you're not going to be able to get a clear picture, most likely, as to what's been happening over the course of time.
Right. Okay.
Debbie, there's another question there on the, should we apply for FEMA and the CARES Act? I think that, I mean, there's two stages there. I think it's important that the trustees in each county discuss with their commissioners what their plan is going to be in their county. I mean, I think that's your first step. And then from there, find from the commissioners what they're going to help reimburse with the townships. So that's the one, is getting that understanding first, because it's not just the CARES Act, it's what is the county going to work with on that particular portion. And then as far as FEMA goes, that would be a direct, that the township goes directly to FEMA. So there's really two different scenarios that really are going on there. And with what they've said at the county meetings is sometimes you may request from both and see who pays. And then the problem is if you wind up getting money from both, you have to send that money back to one of them. And FEMA will come with the 75-25, basically 25% local match. So number one is I think the trustees need to get with their commissioners to determine what the counties are going to pay toward COVID-related expenses.
Let me piggyback on that for just a second, Debbie. Be strategic. I wouldn't necessarily rush out and start submitting applications until you completely understand not only what I agree 100% with Paul, that you understand what your county is going to do, but in some of these cases, these SAFER grants, the FEMA grants, the CARES Act money, phase 1, there could be a phase 2. So these rules are evolving. So be strategic and be diligent, but don't get in too big a hurry, because you may put yourself in a application process that wouldn't maximize your return or maximize your request. So be strategic and talk with your local county and understand everything that's out there.
To the DLGF, will we be having the 2021 budget workshops in person or via Zoom, or how are you doing those?
We will be doing those through what they call Microsoft Teams. It's very similar to Zoom, but it'll be a Microsoft Teams meeting, and it will be virtual. But we'll be in very much of a similar format as what we have here. We'll be able to share documents, and we're ramping up for that. Now we'll be having webinars training on how to use the pre-budget workshop technology, and look for more of that coming out here in the very, very near future.
If we're going to have a 15 to 25% cut in our revenue, how will that affect the CIP? Is there a way to reserve those funds for that cut?
That's construction. Are we talking about construction and project and in process? That's what I think of when I hear CIP. That may not be right.
I don't know if Chris Mueller is on right now. Maybe she can clarify if she is, but that's where the question came from. Not sure. Here's another one. Having to do with the stimulus money for the EMS providers. Is the State Board of Accounts going to help facilitate those of us trying to apply for those funds to apply the funds to ongoing operations? Did you get that, Paul?
No, I'm sorry. I'm trying to answer some of those other questions on the side.
You're multitasking.
Yeah, I know. Well, they asked the one question there about there was one on Mount Vernon had some, I guess, fraudulent checks, and the real thing is those three are not townships. So if the township is involved in one, then go ahead and email it to Chase or myself, and we'll get those to the right places. So the FBI and the state police, when they get involved in it, are all going and looking at trying to find the same locations. The more, the better to try to identify and track it down.
Let me try this question one more time.
Yeah, let's learn that question back.
Okay. They said, I hear things about the bookkeeping being such a hassle. Some are going to send the stimulus money back to the government. At the state level, is the SBOA going to help by being facilitative to those of us trying to apply the funds to ongoing operations?
I don't really, you mean they think that the COVID money is too hard to keep track of, or?
I think it's that Medicare, the EMS money related to Medicare. I think that's what they are referencing.
I guess maybe I'm a little confused. Are they, because we've set aside for townships, so for townships, there's a fund that you would just keep it in a separate fund if it's a township fire department. If whoever's asking the question, if they want to go ahead and give us a call for clarity,
Okay.
or if they want to now, that's fine too.
Yeah,
But
let's go ahead. Have email Debbie or Chase that specific question on that, so they can actually get with them and work on that.
yeah,
Here's one that we did address with guidance letter, and it is posted on the front page of our website. Has it been determined at the township level if stimulus money is considered countable income? And
I'll let you answer that, Debbie, because I did give you, what we said, but we're gonna go with Debbie's view on this. But
well, in statute, there is a list of items that are to be considered countable income. And some of those things are like child support, other forms of revenue to the household that are non-taxable. And so the discussion between ITA and SBOA was, is it considered income? Well, if you look at township statutes, it was our opinion that yes, that is countable under township assistance statute. But under IRS jargon, if you will, it would not be called income because it's not, it's, Paul help me, it's called tax something.
it's actually just, it's a refund of monies, I guess. I don't know. But it's definitely not income from their standpoint. And it's in that gray area, to be honest with you, okay? From the one side, no. From the other side, yes. And we're not going to take exception to what ITA puts out as their official guidance to it.
And that is,
So, I mean, so if ITA puts out, and if you yourself think it ought to be, and you need to include, don't include it, then I think that's between you and your board.
you can think of it, as Paul and I discussed, as resource. If you don't want to call it income, you can say that it was a resource into the household that could be applied to basic necessities.
Yeah, there is other things that are counted as money toward countable income, such as, I don't want to say alimony, but I mean anything. Like I could use alimony in some states, but that's not income. child support, that's not income. Not for guidelines of using those words in there.
Right.
So
Just that that is listed in statute. I think we figured out in statute that is listed, tax refunds are listed as countable income under Township Assistance Statute. It's
Right.
just, we're getting into a situation of terminology or jargon, and that guidance paper is located on the front page of our website if you'd like to look at that. And I appreciate Paul's efforts and the time that we spent discussing, how do we guide people on that one. I think we have another question. Oh, CIP, Capital Improvement Plan, Wes. Back to that
Of
question.
course.
Okay, so do you want me to re-ask the question?
Yeah, yes, please.
Okay. See here. If we are going to have a 15 to 25% cut in our revenue, how will that affect the capital improvement plan? Is there a way to reserve those funds for that cut?
I don't think I can answer the first part of that question because I don't have enough information as in regards to what your plan is. So, but I think the answer to the second part is yes, you can. I believe you can reserve those for time. Likely the amount of your plan is going to be reduced because your revenue is going to be down. So I don't see why you couldn't go ahead and reserve and delay, if you will, the plan because of circumstances have changed since you originally did the plan.
And then Jeff Bellamy, the ITA's attorney, chimed in here and said, per the guidance he's read on the CARES Act, the stimulus payments are a future advance tax credit. So I would treat it similar to a state or federal income tax refund for township assistance purposes. Okay, here's a new one. Some have asked the township to assist local businesses through grant during this time. If funds are available, is this possible? I am aware of some cities trying this to help businesses in their community.
Boy, I tell you, this one of the hardest things I'm going to tell you here is your tax revenues are going to be down 20 to 25%. Don't bleed yourself dry, because you're also going to need assistance before this is over and the economic problems following it is over. So don't give away all your money.
Well, and I would add, I think that's exactly right. And I would also add that there are federal programs out there for the small businesses, just like there are programs for local cities and towns, counties, townships, et cetera. So there is money out there for these small businesses that they should be going after.
And these are not monies that you would recuperate from the COVID money at the state.
So Paul,
Yeah, these are not covered. Yeah.
just to be clear, your answer is yes or no?
Debbie, I'm gonna let you weigh in on this because I know you do this as far as that goes. Grants. Can a township make a grant to a for-profit business?
So again, we get into that community service and whether or not that you want to operate through that, which is what we talked about a little bit earlier for the food pantries, donations. So can you do it? Well, you can probably do it, but is it judicious for you to do it? That is another question. So,
We're not going to walk in as long as you have made a policy that this is what you want to do. But I, once again, will strongly caution you to remember you're going to need these monies before the time is up.
and Chase, can you think of another way that they can do it other than that community services?
Unless they have other unrestricted local funds, I don't think so, but they need to think first, what fund are you going to use, and is it going to help your township citizens? If it's going to be outside your jurisdiction, like Paul said, should you even be thinking about doing that? And in Chapter 1, we have a compliance requirement. You should not donate public funds.
Yeah, a lot of the ones that are doing it are doing with like their local food and beverage tax. And then they're taking that money and putting it back into, say, the restaurants, because they're closed, of course, unless they're like maybe outdoor seating now or to go to. And that money was generated from them. So that's really where they're getting that money from and how they're doing that. So once again, I caution you to do it unless you have lots of extra money, and then you would need to tie it back to how it's going to benefit your particular township in that process.
Well, and I may be speaking out of turn, but I want to say that some of the SBA programs required a partnership or a resolution from the city. So that might be where you see cities and towns helping out with some of those grants. It may be because they're partnering with the SBA.
And
No,
and there is
all's
also,
good in adding to this because this is a strong topic for lots of places.
yeah. And there is economic, again, you have to remember when you talk about cities and towns and counties, they have TIF and they have economic development funds. So they have things that are statutorily geared towards to helping out with these types of things, whereas townships have very narrow type focus.
I mean, you guys, right? You guys are definitely geared to like food pantries, helping and that kind of thing for poverty-stricken people, medical needs, different places, but general survivors of benefits. I would caution against it personally.
Any other questions out there? I think we've had a good dialogue today. I would like to hear from you after this to see what subjects you would like to see discussed in the future, and whether or not this is beneficial to you. And we welcome your feedback back to the ITA. Thank you to Paul and his team and Wes and your team. And I'll give you both an opportunity if you have any parting wisdoms.
Well, Debbie, yeah, I don't know about wisdom, just a lot of hair right now. But again, I apologize for being late on the call. I appreciate everything that you're doing, Debbie, and all the membership of ITA. It's essential work, and you're doing it well. So on behalf of the governor and his team, thank you for your partnership. Thank you for all that you're doing.
I second what Wes is saying, and if we can be any help, don't hesitate to email me, Debbie, Chase, John. I'm sure Wes or his team, and ask a question up front, and try to work through, because all of this is new to all of us. None of us was ready for this to happen. So we know most things are going to be different, and it's not going to be written by guidance that was pre-written for this. So we'll just help you out when we can.